like to start up, and maybe if you guys don't mind, you could maybe quietly get coffee while Walter and David are speaking. We don't want to interfere with these two because they have very important stories to tell. Walter, Imahara, and David Meltzer wrote that book called Jerome-Rohwer. I don't know if you've ever seen or edited that book. And then they just finished another one. What's the title of that one, David? And they just finished another one called Remembrances of the Japanese American internment camps. And these are stories from different people that they've collected and put into this book. So he's now, David and Walter are now working on a third book, and they did ask me to help them, so I will. To collect stories, and Walter has a goal of getting one more book published, and then he said he will stop. But a third collection, and so if you know folks from any of the camps, or I mean, we heard some great stories, please submit them to, well, you can submit them to me and I'll forward it on to David and Walter, and tell other people from other camps. This is for all of the camps. We're looking for stories to include in the next edition of the books. So Walter is a survivor. Walter's family moved to New Orleans after the war, and they established one of the biggest landscape companies in Baton Rouge, and they are famous for that. Walter is also a champion weightlifter. He doesn't tell us that, but he is. He's something else. And David is a professor of physics, and these two have been teamed up writing these books. It's a wonderful resource, and they are going to share with us their stories and what they've been doing. Yeah, and can you believe, it's okay to be up getting your coffee, but let's respect Walter and David, if you don't mind. Thank you. And again, I apologize that the coffee wasn't here, but thank you.
Yeah, hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Walter Imahara. I'm from Louisiana. Okay, and the short story is, I was here at Jerome-Rohwer about 83 years ago. When I got here, I was about 4 years old, huh? And I came from Sacramento, and the story is, before Pearl Harbor, my father purchased a land where he did agriculture outside of Sacramento. And the land was 60 acres. And the house is 2-story. Okay, and it had a tremendous price of $11,000. And he was able to get it because he was an American citizen. Okay, and so he purchased this place, and it is the worst piece of land you can get because all the Caucasians have already got the nice land around Florida to do agriculture. So everything left over when the Japanese, before the war, they got able to get all these pieces of property, large piece, low cost, but full of rocks. Okay, and what can you do with all this land? Okay, my father said, well, he went to table grapes. Okay, and nothing but hard work, there's rocks all over, the ground was not good, but it's good for grapes. Okay, and in those days he said that you have to be really strong-minded because everything is against you in nature. Okay, lack of rain, soil's not good, rocks, and then when you got your crops, you're at the mercy of the co-op. Okay, because all the material that was grown by the farmers were all gathered and shipped to by the co-op, and it was when the crop came in, it went to either Chicago or New York. Okay, and the farmers they got their money, okay, but they had to go pay it back to the co-op. So next year it's the same thing. It's a rat race, could never get anywhere making advances. Okay, but my father did something different. It's one of the best stories you can tell. Because right now, this is before, I would say about 5 years before the war started. Okay, he says that he's going to go into the chicken business. Okay, raise chicken on wire, and he's going to get the eggs. Okay, because he had a barn. And in the barn, he made it such a way that he could raise chicken above on wire, and he knew the feed. Okay, and every Saturday they get his truck and they get all the live chickens and put them in these crates, and they go to Sacramento market. Okay, and then they bring the eggs, and he used to bring in about $250 cash. Okay, and he brought it back, and he said, "What am I doing out there in the field with all these elements against growing crops when he does this in a barn?" Okay, so there's a good story here. So when, so he says he's going to expand it. Okay, by that time I'm about 5 years old, and I wouldn't go in a chicken barn because I'm afraid of the chickens because they were really big, you know. Okay, but that was the beginning. Okay, and the tragic part is when the war came, he lost all the ambition to be in the chicken and egg business. Okay, and his only thought, he used to tell us as children that Americans eat chicken every Sunday and eat eggs every day. So why am I out there growing grapes and strawberry like everyone else, struggling at their mercy? Okay, and it was a very good story. And at that time, not many. There was maybe one person in Northern California raising chicken. Okay, because by this time, all the families, well, they weren't raising chickens for their own use, so they had to go buy it. So it was a good dream. If the war didn't come along, my father says, we'll still be in the chicken business, okay, in Sacramento. Okay, but anyway, when the war came, he, like all the other families, had just days to liquidate, huh? And if you had a refrigerator, somebody offers you $5, you take $5. It goes on and on, more tragic stories when people try to liquidate their belongings. And there are good stories about, a lot of them had, when the war started, they had to get rid of anything that looked, any allegiance to Japan, including flags, albums, photos. Okay, my grandfather, who's a samurai, he came to America in 1895. He threw a samurai sword in a well. Okay, my grandfather came from Hiroshima, 1895, because he was a samurai, and his parents says, "You got to go to America." So through Hawaii, Guatemala, and through Mexico, he made it. Okay, so the Imahara, the first Imahara that hit the land in United States was him in 1895. My grandmother came over a few years later, and my father was the firstborn Imahara, okay, the Nisei, 1903, okay, and then my mother was a California-born Japanese American, so both American citizens. Okay, so a lot of things that they discuss as going into camp that really bothers. Okay, they have to leave everything behind. Now, all those things that we talked about, the trucks and tractors, the mortgage of the house was $3,000 remaining. The bank foreclosed. Who gets it? It's the neighbors. All they do is go to the bank and sign a note. They own everything. Okay, they had people out there that were really interested. They put their own personal guards across the front because they don't want nobody to go take anything out because they're going to go sign the mortgage. They knew exactly when you leave. See, so we lost everything. And that's the most tragic portion of in every Japanese family that had to leave on a moment's notice. There's one family that wrote a story about it, that as they were leaving to go into the truck, to go to the train station to be shipped from Sacramento to go to Fresno, they look back and the neighbors going into the house carrying furniture out. Okay, how you think you like to feel there? So there's a lot of that kind of feelings that my parents had to go through. Well, we're children, and if you have your parents, it's okay, see? And we go to Fresno, where they put us in a horse stable, okay? And we got 2 horse stables, see? Okay, but you came from a home, 2-story home, where it had a bathroom in it. Okay, all of a sudden, you're in a horse stable, see? And that was the beginning of the hardship, mostly for my father and mother. We're children, huh? I mean, when we got to Fresno, my mother was pregnant, and we got to like May 30th about, and June the 2nd, my brother was born, but they had to take him to the hospital in downtown because the facility was not ready. So he was born in camp. And there's a tractor store there. The hospital will not release a birth certificate because they didn't know what to put as citizenship. And my father went back there, he said, you got to put USA. He said, United States, and finally they did. Okay, but when we finally got the birth certificate, you look on the race or colored, okay, they didn't put USA, they put yellow. Okay, that's the way we were treated, see. Okay, we still got that same birth certificate. Okay, then we went, when we got to Fresno Assembly Center, from the horse stables, just a few months later, we were being shipped to Jerome on a train, and the train is what, 4 days, 5 nights. Okay, this is about June of 1942. Okay, we're children in the train, you know, got wooden seats, you know, no facility for bathroom, food was bad, but we finally got to Jerome, and Jerome, the train stopped right at the tracks where it's now, and you get off and you go right into the camp. Okay, so it was a rough beginning, but we as children, and how many children? Okay, there's 8 of us. Okay, and so the children, you with your parents every night, so everything is not so bad, huh? It was the parents that had to go through all this dilemma of being incarcerated. Okay, and again, they mentioned it to the folks that they were being interned. Before they interned, the FBI people came and they said, you know, we're American citizens, and it didn't matter, you're Japanese blood. And there's one story that you never hear about too much, but the Japanese fleet was, after they left Pearl Harbor, they coming back about June of 42, okay? And there's an island called Midway, okay? And the movie just come out again recently, and it shows that the American naval beat the Japanese naval with their warships, huh? Okay, and that general, he contacted a general in California who's putting us in camp at the same month, huh? June of 42. He said, you're making a mistake. There's no way that Japan is ever going to invade California. It is gone. He said, no use putting them in camp. Okay, but the general said, I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, but here we're going into camp, and already the war of Japan coming into California coast was no chance. You got to remember now, when we, the first line of defense was 100 miles inland from the Pacific Ocean inland. Okay, Sacramento was within that area. Okay, from Washington, Oregon, California, part of Arizona. Okay, that's where they drew the line. Okay, but soon that general said, no, that 100 mile, if you're in the state, you're going to be incarcerated. Okay, so that's where it began. Okay, then we're children, we get to Jerome, and it's really, at least we had a barrack. Okay, and you had to go to the restroom, and even in Aurora, the ground around that area is so bad, huh? If it rains, you can't walk in it, so they build walks, huh? You ever see pictures of the walkway in Jerome-Rohwer is boardwalk. That's the only way you can communicate to go to your meal or the bathroom. Okay, you can use a walk. Okay, so as a children, it was not. But again, with your parents, it wasn't too bad. It's the parents that took the beating. Okay, then the time comes when where do you want to move to? The war was over, huh? 1945. Okay, and the government said we're going to give you about 2 months. You go select the place you're going to leave. Okay, my parents, my father especially said he's not going back to Sacramento. Okay, his biggest thing, if I get off the train with all my children and my wife, who's even going to meet us? So there's no contact. So he decided to go with a small group into New Orleans. And they went in he got $20 per person, including himself and his wife and my mother. He got $200 to start life all over. Okay, they found a duplex, brand new duplex. Okay, and it was $60 a month. Okay, this duplex. I was there recently, that's 80 years ago, and I told my friends, see a duplex right after World War II, we come from camp, that's our duplex, it's still there. It's rough shape, okay? So from there, my father in New Orleans had a rough time, okay? Because he had to get a job, and no one's gonna hire a Japanese. Okay, finally, he got jobs that always behind the scene, huh? A nighttime job, working in the nursery, making cuttings, working in the laundry, doing laundry work, anywhere it can't be seen, carpenter work, okay, because you have to have multiple jobs. Okay, so that's how that was rough. And the people in the South at that time was really, we thought they were not going to be prejudiced because it's either black or white. Okay, you remember now, in those days, you go down into Louisiana, service station, restaurants, it's all white, black, drinking fountain, huh? The same thing. But so we fell in a group with the white, so that portion was good. My sister, the oldest one, was the first to graduate from high school in New Orleans about 2 years after the war, and she went to a business school, and she tried to get a job. Put an application in, she put Japanese American, and pretty soon you hear all the same thing. We don't hire the Japanese, etc. And she thought about it a while. It's a good story. He said, wait now, in Louisiana, you're either black or white. She put white, she never, from then on, the word got around, she always had a job. It's a presentation, it's a good thing, see? Okay, now we're coming up in the evenings, we have to eat at a round table, because during camp days, all the family was broken apart, huh? Because the older people ate with older people, kids ate with children, with their own friends, all. Okay, and so we had the round table, and that's where it came from. Okay, and now you had to eat at a certain time, everybody face each other, and only one subject. Okay, well, by that time, I'm getting older, I'm in 3rd grade, 4th grade, I mean, education. That's all you hear about. You're studying, oh man, okay, and then we go to school. Okay, kids were pretty prejudiced because they got it from the parents, so the kids didn't know any better, okay. But even at grammar and school, I mean, in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you get beaten on all the time, okay, and if you got you know the answer, you raise your hand, teacher never calls on you, and when the grades come out, my family always said one thing, it's always one grade below, okay? And so you can see that even in Louisiana at that time, prejudice was there, okay? But somehow we got through all that, okay? Because my parents said they're going to do one thing. They got my older sister graduated. Now there's 8 in the family remaining. And they said, we're going to send everybody to college, and everybody's got a college education. Okay, that's the best thing. What's the second best thing? There's 4 boys. 4 boys. I'm the oldest. okay? And all of it's going to put military time. Okay, I graduated in 1960, and I applied, I joined the Army because I was going to get drafted, okay? And I put in for OCS to go to become a commissioned officer. And boy, did I have a hard time. You know, the class was 6-foot Caucasian, about 60 of them, and here I am. Okay, and the war's been over 15 years, but they still give you a lot of trouble, huh? Okay, but somehow I got through it, and David will talk a little bit about it. I was doing weightlifting, so my strength was really high. So I found out what the OCS record was. I started breaking the records, and all of a sudden, all these years, my name changed. My name started going up. Okay, and I told David, you know how I survived? Because each time they have physical training, I break the record little bit at a time. They got to keep changing it. Okay, so I figured out the system by then. Okay, I did graduate. Okay, and before graduation, they put us in a room. They locked it up. So you all become now a commissioned second lieutenant. Okay, you all requested to be transferred to different places for more education, more service choices that you have. So they locked the door and said, you're all going to one place, you're going to Germany. Okay, because the Berlin crisis on 61. Okay, and then and you don't know where you're going to go. You're going to go to Germany. Okay, now when I got to Germany, the officer picked me up. I looked at it, Dachau. Okay, I said, Dachau. Okay, he knew my background. Yeah, that's a concentration camp. But we went there, and on this post, several blocks confinement, there's all the leftover German facility from the previous war, the barracks, the hospital, everything. Okay, and put the U.S. Army occupy that. Okay, and I'm the first Japanese American officer ever been on a post, so they took me around. And I got to see all the crematorium, the piles of ashes, bone fragments, all. I seen it all. Okay, and many years later I came back. I make talks at the Garden Center. Where we have always had seminars. I'll bring that up. I said, you know that. I can remember that when we were in camp, there's 10 camps in America, and 122,000 Japanese Americans in camp. Well, 5 were killed. They wrote books and articles about these people that were killed. So let me tell you where I've been. Okay, on that post alone, 31,000 of Jewish descent and other people murdered and tortured and died. Okay, I said, what we went through was nothing. Okay, and you guys have all these stories about all the rough times you guys had. Okay, you want to compare it to those in Germany? You're a Jewish person. Okay, so anyway, I came back as a commissioned officer, and my parents were living in Baton Rouge, and they're getting on their feet, going into the landscaping business. Okay, I had a hard time. Because a lot of people, they didn't know how to landscape or care for it. But there's one race of people, is the Jewish people, found out about the Imaharas, and they gave them all his jobs. Okay, then they tell the professional people, they had money, they tell their other people, our business got better and better. Okay, so by the time I could come back in 68, 63, within 5 years, 68, we bought land and we built a garden center. Okay, and a lot of people says, aren't you going to name it? What you going to name it? Okay, my father and I said, we're going to name it Imahara. I said, no. The war has been over 15 years, and you need to make it more generic. You know, call it Pelican State or something, Magnolia Nursery, but not Imahara. Okay, and my father and I said, we're going to do one thing. That name's going to go up there, and one of them says, what's your biggest reason, to me personally, why are you so adamant about using your name? I said, well, I was a weightlifter and became a national champion. So you better, if you're going to beat me on a platform, it's just like in life, you're going to beat me elsewhere. Okay, I had a different attitude. Okay, a very strong attitude, yeah. Okay, David would talk more about that. Okay, and so by that time, about 20 years after the war was over, now I'd say about 1965, we live in Baton Rouge, and we took our first trip with my parents to Jerome, Florida, okay, in Rohwer, okay, and we got to see all the broken barracks, all falling down, and they're rotting. I mean, it was a mess. Okay, but each time we came, every 4 or 5 years, it got cleaner and cleaner. Okay, and like I said, the museum was put up 15 years ago. Okay, from then on to now, we come annually. Okay, okay, and it was a good thing. I seen all the people. 3 busloads came in this time with John. Before that, this lady named Kamiko Marr had the job, like John, to bring in outsiders from like internees and their families, and they came in. At one time, they had 5 busloads. You got 3 busloads, okay? And each time, the mayor of McGee is very graceful. Oh, he just loves us, you know. Because they know the story, okay? And so every year, in the last 12 years, I came every year, and I always see these people, and I said, David, I think I'm going to ask these people, give me a story, okay? And other colleagues said, you find a story everywhere about internees, just print it. I said, no, we're going to do one thing. We got to go to the person, okay? Just like I'm asking you people, John will ask you, we want your personal history, see? Because we're going to make one more book, okay? David will cover that. Okay. So anyway, here it is. We ended up in Baton Rouge, and we became one of the most successful garden center landscape company in the state. Okay, some people say your garden center, most part of we won national awards on it. Okay, okay. So every time you get a chance, you Google my name, and there's a garden center in there. Okay, and one thing that we did. As we were building this 40 years ago, we're on the 3rd location. We're going to build in one last garden center, and my father was still alive. He said, if you're going to build it, make sure you add on enough rental income property so when you retire, you get all the income from rental. He said, you don't lease, you lease to others, but you never want to lease yourself. You want to own the property. Okay. Okay, my niece Wanda's here, and she took over the job of running a landscape company. Okay, and now we still got some of the biggest jobs in Baton Rouge. They still give them to us. Okay, but what you mean you still give them to us? Well, a lot of the owners of all these big hospitals and institutions, they remember the Imaharas. Okay, sometimes we're not low bid. But what you guys got the job anyway? Well, my niece would tell you how we can do that. Okay, but they favored us. And those people that favored us, they knew the background about okay. They also found out about the 4 boys that joined the military. Okay, okay, and my younger brother, he's a major, and he's a medical student, so he went into Vietnam. Okay, he came back. Okay, then my brother Mike is attorney. Was going to go to Cuba, okay, and President Kennedy stopped that. We were going to war with, in Berlin Wall, Kennedy stopped that, okay, and people said, you got it? I said, we love Kennedy. He kept us from going to war. Okay? He took care of us. Okay? Then my youngest brother, he joined the Navy, and all 4 boys returned. So my parents, they had hard times, yeah, okay. Okay, at this time, I'm going to give the program to David Meltzer. He's a good friend of mine for many years. He edited all my books. Okay, David, can you take over, please?
So as Walt told you, he was meeting people. Everybody has a story, very similar to Walt's own story. He asked them to write it down. And he had the idea, we're going to put all these stories together. And it's starting out, the stories from Jerome and Rohwer. And so the 2 books that we finally ended up with are the Jerome-Rohwer book, published 4 years ago by University of Arkansas Press, and the most recent one, which is Remembrances from all the different camps. So I just want to talk a little bit about how these books came into being, and it started out with what Walt just told you. He was asking people for their stories, so write them down, send them in, and what this book eventually became was the very first book-length collection of first-person stories from Jerome-Rohwer. Of course, there had been stories before. Individuals had written their stories up as a book, but this was a collection, and these were first-person accounts or accounts written by close family members focused on Jerome-Rohwer. Then the next book, the most recent book, has stories from all the different camps. 9 out of the 10 incarceration centers are represented in the newest book. It's the same idea, but it stretches out a little bit. We have some of the accounts in the new book talk about life after internment. What happened? What was the impact on the families? What was the impact? What was it like with the young kids? You know, the young kids in the camp, the very young ones like Walt. They had limited memories about it, but they heard of the stories later on from their parents, from their older siblings. And so a lot of those get recounted in that second book. I want to talk just briefly about the timeline. It was 7 years ago, actually, that Walt started really asking people to write down the stories and send them in, and got a great response. A lot of people did have stories, and they did write them out, and they did send them in with pictures. Walt asked them to send in any photographs they had. He came to the pilgrimages and spread the word, and he was getting a great response. And then he and Sumi his wife Sumi began to edit them, put them in a form that would be suitable for a book, and asked me to come in and help them on that. And what I realized very quickly is that this was a project that really merited a broad distribution. This was something that needed to reach just beyond our small community here to a wider audience. So I contacted the University of Arkansas Press and asked them if they might be interested in publishing this. This being an important historical document relating to the history of Arkansas, after all. And they were actually very enthusiastic, and they said, yes, we'd be honored to publish that. And so it was in 2020, Walt signed a contract with them to do the book. But from then on, it's a long process. You know, even though all the material had been collected and we had edited it, when you go to a book publisher, major, significant university book publisher, there's a long process of editing it, and a lot of different rounds of editing. They would edit, and I would edit, and then there would be getting into the production stage where they put it into proofs, and you'd have to proofread the proofs and check for accuracy and work for stylistic consistency, which is very hard because everybody had their own way of spelling different words. And it's a long, long process. It took eventually 2 years. And we knew that we had a lot of contributors. We had dozens of people who contributed stories, and we wanted to get something in their hands quicker. And so with the agreement from the University of Arkansas Press, what we did was we published a preliminary proof edition, which is not for general sales, just for distribution to the contributors and their families. We were able to get that out pretty quickly. It was done in-house. Walt's niece, Amy Metz, did the artwork for the cover, as you see there, and the production was done. We did it through a self-publisher, and Walt and Sumi did a lot of the editing, and I did a lot of the final editing for production, and that's what this is. This is that preliminary proof edition that we're able to get out quickly. But finally, eventually, in February of 2022, the Jerome-Rohwer book was published, and it's available now on their website. And these are the different chapters. These are the more than 36 contributors to the book, and all sorts of different stories. And this here is a photograph of Walt's family in the Jerome camp. Walt's family with the neighbors. This is Walt's entire family plus some of their neighbors there. It's the only photograph they have of their family in the camps. Walt's down there in the front row, third from the right, and sitting next to his sister Lily. And so the stories are very varied. Some of them were first-person accounts, but sometimes they were written by close family members. And just as an example, Russell Endo, who was born during the war, so he didn't have his own memories, but he had his mother's letters. He had a collection of the letters that his mother had written to her friends while she was incarcerated, and then also her testimony to Congressional Committee in 1975. So he was able to edit that together, and it's a very vivid portrayal of her experiences during internment. But we also had first-person accounts from people, for instance, from Rinko Anosaki was a teenager when she was interned in Jerome. And she was able to write, very fortunate to get this, a detailed write-up of her experiences, published for the first time in that book. And other example, Janet Hayashi had photographs of her doing a dance performance when she was interned at Rohwer. The Ichinaga family had themselves, about 20 years earlier, published their own stories, sort of done a self-publication. And they gave us permission to reprint many of those stories in our book. And Monty Ichinaga was our key contact on that. He was really very helpful in making sure that happened. Of course, Walter wrote his own story, and it's a very interesting photograph here. This is Walt's first grade class at Rohwer, we think. And he's sitting there in the front row, and next to him, on his right, is Joanne Okada. And many years later, when it turned out that Joanne and Walt were attending a funeral together, and Joanne recognized Walt, even though she hadn't seen him since first grade, just recognized him from his very recognizable face. And the last time they'd been together was, you can see in that photograph. And as Walt mentioned, he was in the Army, first lieutenant, and attended many of the pilgrimages to Jerome-Rohwer. There were all sorts of interesting stories. This is the hospitality center in Jerome, where some of the Japanese-American soldiers from nearby camps were entertained and socialized with some of the internees. This is a sketch that Lily Metz, Walter's sister, drew of the barracks from her recollections in Jerome and Rohwer. Clover Johnson had many detailed conversations with her father and her uncles, and they told her lots of stories. And so her father, Milton Nagata, was one of the electricians in the Jerome camp and helped people repair all kinds of devices. And that's a photograph of him there standing with another of the electricians. And let's see. Oh, photograph there is a friend of her uncle's, and that's a chimney. That's a chimney at Jerome, the famous chimney that is about all you can see there right now in the Jerome's camp. Tim Tyra's father was camp doctor, so he has lots of interesting stories. It's a photograph of him and his brothers over here. And again, most of the first-hand accounts were from people who had been children or teenagers, but we did have a very few, from people who had been adults. And one of the key ones was from George Taraoka, who was 21 years old when he was interned in Jerome. And I was very fortunate to meet him when he was attended the pilgrimage 3 years ago. And he gave us a story of his experiences. And then if you've been at the museum in McGee, there's this little bench there. It was contributed by Joanne Kitana Wang. And it was a bench that her father had made when they were interned in the Jerome camp. And Dan Yoshi, also born during the war, didn't have his own recollections, but had stories from his father, who is on the police department in Rohwer, and apparently was chief of police for a short time in Rohwer. We did a very detailed index. We had a professional indexer create an index for this book, so it's hopefully of some use for scholars. And we worked very hard to identify each of the individuals who had been an internee, and that's identified in the index. And then Walt had the idea, well, let's do another book. This time, let's do a book where people from all the different camps would be able to contribute their stories. And so we began to work on that collection. And 3 years ago at the Pilgrimage, spread the word. We had a flyer about that, send in your stories. And once again, got a really good response. We were, and just last year, we were able to publish that from the by Gatekeeper Press. That's the flyer that we passed around at the Pilgrimage 3 years ago. And that's the book. That's this one here. And it came out, again, really nice. Dedicated to Walt's wife, Sumi, who played such an important role in bringing these books into production. And dozens of stories from, again, both first-hand accounts, family members, and also some friends and associates who had learned many of the stories from the former internees. I contributed a long historical introduction to try to put it all into context. And then we had representation from almost all of the internment centers. So from Amachi, from Poston, Manzanar, Hart Mountain, of course Jerome-Rohwer, some news stories there. Topaz, Minidoka. We weren't able to get anybody from Gila River, so we did miss one. Tim Tyra contributed another story talking about his time after, the post-evacuation time, as he says. And so a lot of those stories in that second book do focus on the impacts on the time after the war. John interviewed his father, George, and we have that interview in the book as well. And I wanted to mention Tule Lake. We have a story from historian John Fair. We don't have first-person account, but this is a story about Tommy Kono. Tommy Kono, I don't know if you know him or not, but Tommy Kono is the best weightlifter in American history. And his story starts actually at Tule Lake. He was a rather sickly boy. He suffered from asthma, and turned out that the weather at Tule Lake, where he was interned with his family, was very dry and helpful to him and helped him heal up and helped him feel better. And it also turned out that there were a bunch of internees at Tule Lake who were doing weightlifting. They had weightlifting equipment and they were practicing weightlifting as a sport. And Tommy got interested in that and began to get very good. And by the time he got out of the camp, he was really getting extremely good and actually became a U.S. champion and very shortly became one of the best weightlifters in the world after getting his start at Tule Lake. Tommy won the Olympic gold medal in 1952, then he went on to win in 1956. He won 6 additional world championships in weightlifting. And this is somebody that Walter did mention. Walter was U.S. senior national weightlifting champion 6 times. And so Tommy was sort of a mentor to Walt in weightlifting and well, starting with weightlifting. That's what brought Walt and me together too. I'm in the sport also. And so it's a fascinating story that the guy who was recognized as the best weightlifter in U.S. history got his start out in the internment centers. So these books are all on sale at the museum in McGee, the Interpretive Center. You can also get them online, University of Arkansas Press, Japanese American National Museum, and Amazon. And so they should all be readily available. And I guess probably we should just, I'll stop talking. We'll both stop talking, see if there's any questions you want us to answer.
There's one portion when I was writing the story about the 10 internment camps. I got letters even from Washington, D.C. He says, you have to use the word concentration camp. Okay, it's been proven that it was in fact, if you're going to use the word, you need to change it from concentration internment. Okay, and I wrote each one of them back about my story of my life going into concentration camp at Camp Dachau. And at the end, they said, you write your story that you like, okay? Because I said, ours was internment. You don't know what a concentration camp until you've been to one. Okay, so anyway, so I got David, I asked John to really help me on this next book, okay, and we get a lot of suggestions. You know, there's a lot of stories out there. Why don't you just make copies of it? He said, no, we're not going to do that. We want firsthand. It's got to come from the family. And turning all the family, and now John's going to travel to all these different internment camps that has museums and tours. And that's where he's going to try to get some more stories. Okay, John.
Any questions from, and thank you guys, man, really nice. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I just wondered, did you ever consider using the term incarceration rather than internment?
Yeah, we use that a lot, although not necessarily on the titles, but we do make use of the word incarceration, yes. The incarceration and internment. But Walt felt strongly that that he didn't want to use the term concentration camps.
So the story of using internment is coming from me, because I've been in a concentration camp in Germany. And if you've been to one, you will know why. Yeah.
We do have a little description of the difference between incarceration and internment in the program. That kind of explains why people do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, we can do that at another time. And we can even talk about the usage of the term concentration camp and talk about why so many of the Asian Americans will use it despite what's going on
I'll say
in
just one
Germany.
quick word. Strictly speaking, yes, they were concentration camps according to the standard scholarly definition of concentration camps. The differences are solely in the, not the academic usage, but the everyday usage. What does that word mean to the people in the street? What does it mean, you know, does that mean it was a death camp? Does that mean people were, you know, murdered there? And so because of that misunderstanding, that's really where the controversy comes from in terms of the description. But formally, academically, scholarly, yes, they were concentration camps, no question about that.
John, I wanted to make that distinction too. You know, I give these talks to elementary school kids and homeschool kids, and I always say, but let me make this distinction. You've heard of Nazi concentration camps. This was not the Nazi concentration camp, but it was an American concentration camp. Then I try to explain the differences. And you're right, I'm with you, you know, internment was what we grew up with, but now we're calling it America's concentration camp. So, but when you're talking to elementary school kids, you have to try to make that distinction, because the distinction is it was a Nazi concentration camp versus America's concentration camp.
I have a question.
Yeah.
David, I have known you for many, many years, and you've spent so many times giving just your heart time, your love for this. What is the reasoning behind your involvement in the Japanese American storyline?
That's interesting, because I knew only the barest minimum before I met Walt, and it was really only when I met Walt and started hearing his stories about what happened to his family and getting into it more and more and learning more and more that I myself became educated on the whole horrendous period of internment, incarceration during the war. I didn't know about it. I just knew it had happened, and I think that's true of most Americans. They know sort of that it happened, but that's it. They don't know the details. They don't know the horrors. They don't know about the horse stalls. They don't know about the horrendous bathroom facilities. They don't know about the armed guards, the barbed wire. They don't know about that. They've never been taught that. And so when I learned about this and I became more and more interested, well, that I began to develop my own passion for doing this project and getting these books done, helping Walt, really just me, helping Walt getting these books published and putting them out into the community and getting them out for every other American to be able to read and see.
Can we say something about the weightlifting, how we came together?
You know, I forgot to mention during the introduction that Walter told me that the reason you guys got together is because you also are a really good
Yeah,
weightlifter.
so Walt and I it was the thing that links Walt and me and Tommy Cohn. It was the only thing that links me to Tommy Cohn, although we did room together at one of our competitions. Is Walt was a champion weightlifter, national champion, world masters champion, many times world masters champion, an elite weightlifter. That's what Walt was. I'm just a recreational weightlifter, but I participated in the Masters. Walt was the chairman of the World Masters weightlifting, the U.S. Masters weightlifting, and then I moved. It turns out I moved to Louisiana and began to train with Walt. We trained together in Baton Rouge, and that's how I began. That's really how I ended up here, honestly. It's these interesting routes that people follow, and that was my interesting route.
Good morning. I'm curious about the difference between the artist, well, not the artist proof, the proof copy that you created and the published copy. And the question really is, was there any particular area of the book that the editors from the press wanted to change that you insisted to keep?
No, they didn't change anything. But trying to get stylistic, remember what you're trying to do. You're trying to get every word in every story, or name of a place, or you want to get it spelled the same, you want to get the style the same, you want to get, these people have written their stories in their own way. But for the book, you want a consistent style. They didn't take anything out, absolutely nothing. It was very lightly edited, and they allowed me, but I had basically the final word on it, working with Walt, but I supervised it, and it was honestly just to make it a really clean, perfect job. The proof is very good, but now that I look at it, I see, there's little typographical errors on every page, and there's things we missed in the proofreading. But in the final published version of the Jerome-Rohwer book, we edited and we proofread that. I can't tell you how many times. Me and another proofreader, dozens of times. We tried to squeeze out every bit. We tried to make it as perfect as possible. We were a little more lax on the proof copy, I'm afraid. That's really the only difference.
Thank you, Walter and David. This is a great session.